Hi there, and welcome to my March Missive, um, and welcome to my thoughts and ramblings about what's been going on recently. I've just arrived in Manchester, as it happens, at 1 o'clock in the morning. Such is the life of a barrister in preparation for my hearing tomorrow. But this month, I've been thinking long and hard about the police corruption, and the question of whether or not our Met Police, as well as those of other jurisdictions, are institutionally misogynistic, racist, and corrupt. And I take no pleasure at all from Baroness Casey's report a few weeks ago, when she indicated that precisely that. She was wondering whether or not the Met as an institution could survive or needed to be dismantled entirely. And Baroness Lawrence, who has campaigned tirelessly in respect of her son Stephen, and in the wake of his death, she said her view was 25, 30 years after the death of her son, the police were still rotten to the core, and that there had been no progress at all. And for my part, having defended crime over almost 30 years now, I genuinely took no pleasure in hearing the criticisms that were made of the police. I take no pleasure in, the recent horrific cases involving officers abusing women and sexually assaulting them. And I took no pleasure in that, even though it's a drum that I have been banging as a defence barrister for the last 30 years. I just simply cannot remember the number of cases where I've asserted police corruption. Forget about that. The number of cases where I've been able to prove police corruption. And even in those circumstances, I found myself staring across the courtroom at the blank faces of 12 members of the jury. Blank faces because even if it's plain as a pikestaff, in the past, jurors have simply been unable to accept that which they know to be true, because to do so would cause them a huge amount of anxiety, and would cause them to reassess entirely those things that they took for granted. We all like to sleep in our own beds at night, safe and secure in the knowledge that the boys in blue are in fact protecting us, rather than causing us harm, looking after us rather than corruptly seeking to prosecute us. And so it's been very difficult in the past to get a jury to accept that a police officer may behave badly. It may be easier now as a result of the highly publicised criticisms that the police made from a whole load from different areas. But there we are. I very much hope that the Met manage to sort themselves out one way or another, and I hope they manage to do so sooner rather than later. I've also been thinking recently about Suella Braverman and immigration policy. As part of that, I've heard on the radio and in various places some strident criticisms, for example, of immigration policy resulting in, for example, Pakistani grooming and paedophile gangs. And that has become a race rather than a criminal issue. And I've been really concerned about it because I feel that that type of definition, saying, for example, that a particular race are more inclined to a particular crime than another, is not only untrue, but it is hugely damaging to our community. It has resulted in some towns with racist attacks. It's resulted in acrimony between the communities one way or another. And it amazes me that there is discussion, for example, of Pakistani grooming gangs as if this is a race-related crime, in circumstances where, if we just pause to think about it for a second, we would realize how racist that is and how untrue it is. Just from the top of my head, the Catholic Church, which I'm a member, paedophilia has been, over the last 10 years, exposed case after case after case, priest after priest after priest, abuse after abuse after abuse, damaged child after one, after another, after another, after another. And you know what? So far as the Catholic Church are concerned, those priests that are proved or asserted to have been paedophiles, aren't they overwhelmingly white? They are. What about the social services and individuals who manage to get into the social services to inveigle themselves with children? Those who get involved in the care industry, looking after children one way or another, or those getting involved in teaching, those involved, for example, in foster caring, those involved in children's homes, overwhelmingly white, aren't they? And paedophilia as a crime is nothing to do with Asian, Pakistani, Chinese, English, black, white. To categorize it and seek to ring fence it by way of ethnic demographic is utterly misleading, very damaging, and particularly insidious, because all individuals who are looking for an explanation for this type of conduct need to hear is something like that, and they will latch onto it and believe it to be true. It's a very concerning turn of events, as far as I'm concerned. I hope that there is very soon something of a balance, one way or another, in terms of the rhetoric that is espoused from those who are in positions of authority, our MPs, our government, our local councillors, or indeed our lawyers and our commentators who we listen to on television. It's been a trying time for the bar generally. Certainly it has been for me. The concerns expressed by the Criminal Bar Association when we went on strike, and the comments made by Joe Sidhu, who was our representative at the time, have turned out to be absolutely true. There has been a departure of individuals from the bar in droves, and at the moment there simply aren't enough barristers to cover the cases. I was in Nottingham earlier on today before I had to U-turn and come all the way up to Manchester. And the case before mine was one in which the defendant was accused of sexually abusing a young girl. That young girl's family were in court, so distressed about the fact that this case hadn't come on as yet, and with a whole load of things they would have wanted to say to the judge. The case was listed for trial, not just for the first time, not the second time. This was the third time that it had been listed for trial in circumstances where there simply wasn't a defence barrister to represent the defendant. And when I say there wasn't one, you can imagine that because of the pressing need to get that type of case on, the clerks to whichever chambers were responsible for it, they canvassed literally every barrister in the land to see whether or not there was anybody who was able to take on that case. As I looked across from counsel's benches to the public gallery and saw the father of this young girl shaking her head, I just had a huge degree of sympathy for him, one way or another, because if he's a member of the public who, by virtue of the fact that he's involved in the criminal justice system, can see firsthand the appalling state of our criminal justice system, and and he's seen firsthand the fact that it's literally being brought to its knees, one way or another. But I have to say, when I consider the junior doctor strike recently, and the nurses who have rejected their pay offer, the attitude of the government is so appalling that I can only feel blessed and very grateful that we got our 15% increase as barristers in that 6-week interregnum where Liz Truss was for a very short time the Prime Minister, and where for a very short time the Minister for Justice was someone sensible, one way or another. I know the huge efforts and the huge commitments that anybody in public service, whether it's a nurse or whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a doctor, whether it's somebody who is in social care, their vocations, and I know the huge amount of work and commitment that they daily put into their lives to the benefit of others. I know this is an appalling period of time for the government. I know that the Exchequer is all but bankrupt, and I know they are extremely worried about inflation. But surely a more primary concern, both morally as well as sensibly, is to remunerate those who, upon whom our community depends. Our National Health Service is utterly essential to the way in which we function as a community. Our legal system, utterly essential to the way in which we function as a community. Teachers who are renewing their strikes, those who educate our children, utterly essential to the way in which we function as a community. Now, whether or not taxes are raised to pay for that, or whether or not there is some other method through which the government can fund what is just, very basic fair pay for individuals who commit themselves to public service rather than going into other more lucrative commercial endeavours. I just hope one way or another the government eventually do what is both morally and sensibly right. Anyway, that's how long has it been? Oh, 11 minutes already. That's that's my March Missive. I will see you guys in April. Bye for now.